Hello and welcome to a MixItUp tutorial. Today we're going to be covering one of the most common features of a live stream, and that is chat commands. MixItUp has a very nice suite of tools for chat commands. So first we're going to come into MixItUp. We're already signed in here. We're on the chat tab here. We're going to come over to our sidebar and we want to come down to commands. Here in commands, you might start on the pre-made commands tab. So this is what it'll look like if you started there. These are all commands that are automatically built into MixItUp, and a lot of them are very handy. So definitely check them out. You can toggle them on or off over here on the right. But that is not what we're going over today. We're going to go over custom commands today. So here over in custom commands, this is where you can make your own commands. And when I'm talking about commands, I mean something that someone can put into the chat that will trigger something to happen, whether it's like a bot saying something back at them, or maybe it can be as advanced as playing a video on the screen or incrementing a counter or something. It's whatever you want. But this is going to be the most basic version of it. So while we're on the commands tab here, and we are actually in the custom commands section, we're going to go ahead and hit the very bottom button here. It says new command. This will bring up the command editor window, and this has a few features. First of all, you have the name. This name is arbitrary. It's just for you to recognize what the command is actually going to do. Nobody else will see this but you. It just exists within MixItUp. The command group is going to be a drop-down that will contain all of the other command groups you've already created in the entire software. So as you can see, I have a few of these groups behind me here: counters, gaming PC, hangman. So you'll see that those are also included in here. And so picking any of these will just include this command in the window behind it here, and it'll be one of these. And if you want to create a new group, all you have to do is click on that box and just type in a new word, and that will be the name of your new group. Next, we have the most important part, probably, and that is the chat trigger itself. Now, the most common way that live stream chat triggers are formatted is with an exclamation point at the beginning. Now, you don't necessarily have to do that if you want to use the tools in a different way, but to keep it the same as everybody else so everybody understands the way your stream works, it's probably best to. So how MixItUp works is, as you can see, just under the chat trigger line here, we have this checkbox here, and this is the auto-include exclamation point. What that means is whatever you type up here to be your command, like your command word, in order to trigger this command, we'd have to put an exclamation point in front of it. But instead of you having to type that every time, MixItUp has this nice feature where it auto defaults to go ahead and put that in front of it for you. So you can see in the instructions here above the bar, it actually says no exclamation point needed. But another thing to remember with this is if you do turn it off, you can do some really cool things with your commands and, get creative with it. So when you turn off auto include exclamation point, first of all, you can make it, I guess, $sign if you wanted to. That should work. But one really cool thing I like to play with sometimes is this wildcard function. If you click on the wildcard, it now makes it to where it will just find whatever word you put here in any sentence and trigger. So if you wanted to have like a hidden word of the day or something, or you wanted every time someone said love for a heart to pop up on the screen, for perhaps you can just put the word love here. So then if someone said something, for example, like I love this, a little heart will pop up, or such and such love. It doesn't matter where it is in the sentence, it'll find it. With wildcards turned on, wherever these words are in the message, this chat command will trigger. But to keep it standard, we're going to auto-include the exclamation point. And so, similar with the wildcards, you can put multiple words up here. So let's say we were going to make a command that was just going to put a nice little love message out there to maybe hug somebody else in the chat. So we could have the word hug be the command. That would make sense. Exclamation point hug makes sense. But maybe we want to also have hugs. Maybe some people like to put the S on the end, so you have hugs. Maybe you wanted the word love to be also one. So in this instance here, it can either be the word hug, hugs, or love, but it has to be just that word. So if you wanted to do a multi-word command, you would do something like big hug and then put a semicolon there. That lets it know that this is actually like one command unit, if you will. And that would require us to actually write exclamation point big hug in order for that. So if you just typed in big, that wouldn't trigger it. You'd have to have both words. All right, and last but not least here, we have our unlock command checkbox here. And as you can see, if you hover over it, it does give you a brief description. But the cliff notes are that when you have multiple commands run at the same time, they get queued up in the order in which they were triggered. Unlock command lets it trigger the command anyway, even if another command is running. I found this to be useful when I'm using certain commands that have wait statements in them. So I've experimented with having like minute-long wait statements that then trigger things like a minute after another thing. And when that is in the queue, it can clog up the queue for multiple minutes. So if you're trying to use long waits and you're finding that your commands seem to fire way later than you wanted them to, it might be because you need to start unlocking commands. It does warn you in here to please use caution because it can cause issues. But just to let you know, if you want to get your commands to fire on time every time, it's nice. It can be nice to unlock them, but definitely use at your own caution. Now, before we get into the actions and all of that, let's go into the usage requirements. This can be a very nice moderation area. So first we have our user role. Now this is how we set who can use the command that we're creating. So we have a first drop down here being which streaming platform you're on. And the second one is the actual rank of the role. So every role below, or I should say above in this scenario, is carried on over to the next one below it. So a regular can do everything a follower can, but a follower can't do everything a regular can. A subscriber can do more than a regular. A moderator can do more than a subscriber. A streamer can do more than a moderator. So that's sort of how it works when you're in this mode. You can switch over to the advanced mode and be a little bit more picky on how your users work. So then it gives you a lot more stuff like Twitch VIP, YouTube member. It kind of puts them all in a big pile, but then you can just pick which ones out of all of these. So we could say only Twitch staff can do this one, and the streamer can do it, and Twitch VIPs can do it, and maybe my YouTube members as well. Who knows? Whatever you're doing, I'll let you completely customize who has the control to do what. We're just going to go ahead and leave it on simple, and I'm just going to leave it on all users for now. We're just going to keep it very simple. In this situation, anyone who comes in my chat would be able to use it. One of the most common things you'll probably use this for is to probably either make a command follower only or perhaps subscriber only if you want to give subscribers a little bit of something extra they can do. Or you might make it moderator only if it's something that's just helping you sort of keep the peace. Our next icon here is our cooldown. Now this is nice for people when they try to spam it. It's an anti-spam feature. So you can have a couple different types of cooldowns. You have the standard, the per person, or the group. The standard cooldown is a cooldown on the entire command. So if one person runs the command, like person 1 runs it, and then person 2 tries to run it, and they're running it too soon. So let's say we set it to like a 10-second cooldown. Person 1 runs it, and then 5 seconds later, person 2 runs it. It's not going to run the second time. It'll actually spit out a message to let the user know that that command is on cooldown. Now, if you have it set per person, if person number 1 does it, and then 5 seconds later, person number 2 also triggers it, it will fire because it's just per person. If person 1 tries to fire it 5 seconds later, it will not work for person 1, but can work for person 2. So that's a per person cooldown. Then you have group cooldowns. Now you can have entire groups of commands that share a cooldown. So if one of these groups is used, then the entire group is now on cooldown for that many seconds. And that can be pretty handy. So definitely something to keep in mind. But most of the time, standard works pretty well. It's going to be probably the most common use case, I would guess. For this one, let's go ahead and keep a 10-second cooldown. Why not? All right, next we have currency. Now, currency is probably a video all in itself, so we won't get into it too much, but just know that you can create your own internal currency within MixItUp. So let's say you're not an affiliate on Twitch, for example, and you don't get all those cool bells and whistles of channel points. Well, you can still sort of have a reward system if you like, and that's all going to be handled in the currency system. So next we have ranks. Now, ranks is another thing it can be quite complex and is out of the scope of this video. But just know that there is a ranking system that you can employ into your commands as well. And we can go over that in another video. As well as the inventory is going to be very similar. Inventory is sort of like currency, but you can actually have sort of named items and stuff that you can assign to people, and then you can check for those inventory items. It's very interesting. I like to think of it as you can add variables to your users, and then you can set those variables to be true or not, and use those for checks if you like. I've not ever found a perfect use for them, but it is something that's kind of interesting to possibly play around with. So for the arguments requirement, this is something we can go over. Now, for arguments requirements, what this is controlling is what data can be passed to a command. When we want to have a target user, or if we want a number to be passed for maybe like a counter increment or something, we're going to want to control what kind of data can come in and out. Or we don't have to, but we can control the data that comes in to that command. And so for an example, a command like that could be something like, for our hug example, we might, instead of just doing !hug, we don't know who we're hugging. It's just going to be a general message, right? But if you actually want to point the hug at someone, we could then do it like an @ command, and then I'll just @ myself here, @ dommdynamite. And so then I'm hugging myself. So that's what I mean by a parameter, or what do we call it? An argument. An argument here would be the dommdynamite person here. So it might be like, for another example, deaths. And we're trying to set our death counter to like 51 or something, So then you can say like deaths is 51, and you're passing the 51, but the command is deaths. The argument is 51. So that's what we mean by arguments. Now, when it comes to controlling arguments, let's go back to our argument requirement. You can go ahead and add one here. And what we're doing is we are sort of just, really what this amounts to is it creates a check for a variable type. So like whether or not it's a word or whether it's a number. And then it will let someone know if they enter the wrong thing. Like if it wants a number, but they gave it a word, it'll be like, hey, what I wanted was, and then it's whatever you put here. So we'll say like number of hugs. And the thing we want here, see, we can be a user. So that's the @dommdynamite example. Or we have number, that's like the deaths example, or decimal, just so that's just a different type of number. Or it could be text. And so that's like if a message is what you want. But in this case, the number of hugs would be a number. And we can also set whether or not it's optional. So if it's not optional, that will come up with an error message if they don't include it. But if it is optional, that means that there's some sort of way that this function is going to resolve without the need for whatever input that you were asking for. So we'll keep it simple, and we're not going to do arguments for this example. We're just trying to go over the most basic command. I just want to let you guys know that all these features are available to you because I encourage you to play with them. So next we have the user threshold option. So this is basically a hype train inside MixItUp. So if you want a command to only run if multiple people run the command, this is what you would use to do that. So we have a required users number. So first of all, it's 0 to start. But would say if we had 2 required users, then we would have to have 2 people use our hug command, and then it would finally run. And then you can have the time span is how long will it wait for another user to run it before it restarts the whole timer, and then 2 people have to do it all over again. So you could say if a second person doesn't do it within 10 seconds, then we're going to have to start the whole thing over and get the first hug going and then the second hug. So this can be pretty fun. I personally like to use this for combos on my own streams. So if one person runs a command, I usually have it then trigger possibly another command that is that has a required user threshold. And so if they get like a sound effect, but if 3 people play that sound effect, then they also get a meme that pops up. So that's one way you could implement this to do like combos or something. But for now, we're going to keep it simple, as I said before, and just keep it at 0. All right, and now we have, last but not least, just some general settings. So we have show on chat list context menu, and now this has to do with your chat list within MixItUp, and so it's whether or not it'll actually show that the command was run, or if it'll clean that kind of stuff out for you. Because I think by default it should take it out for you. And then we have delete chat message when run. So when someone uses it, you can have your bot automatically delete the message, which in theory would help clean up chat. But for your moderators, it can actually kind of make it look a little messy because it shows a bunch of deleted messages. So, you know, it depends on what you want. It can kind of help hide a command a little bit. But if you personally are running commands, I don't recommend using chat commands in the first place. I recommend using action groups, and that we will cover in another video. But this is for if your users are going to run something. That's what I recommend commands for. Otherwise, there might be a better tool, depending on what you want to do. All right, so that's the entire top panel. Finally, we can get to the magic of the whole thing, and that is within the actions. Now, there's a lot of actions, so I'm not going to be able to go over all of them. I simply don't know how all of them work. I've only ever used a good half of them, maybe. But to keep it simple, we're going to stick with our chat message idea, where when someone wants to give someone else a hug, they'll get a message back that tells them that their hug was successful. So, you know what? First of all, let's fill this stuff in. We're going to call it hug. And I'll do it under example commands. Make a new group called example commands. We're going to make hug, hugs, love, loves, love, LUV. All of those words will work to trigger our command. And okay, so back down to the bottom, we've already selected chat message from our list here. So it's here in the action bar. So we're going to hit plus. And now we have our module here. So each time you add a command, or an action, I should say, to the command, it'll have this blue bar. And this section details what that bar is going to do. So we have a chat message action here. So we get a few different options here. We get send as streamer if you want to make sure it uses your streamer account. So for me now, it's going to send it as dommdynamite. If I have it turned off, it uses my bot account, which is the auto mod. Ignore the whisper. I believe this doesn't work anymore, so just ignore that. As far as I understand, this is just not something that works within Twitch anymore. I guess it may work on other platforms. I'm a little unfamiliar with that, but if you're on Twitch, this is something that doesn't work. Yeah, they are supported on Twitch, but highly discouraged it being used. You can see it right there. Anyways, they do have a helpful link right here for special identifiers reference. This is so helpful. I cannot stress enough how helpful this is. If you click this guy right here, it'll bring us to their documentation here. And in their documentation, they give you all of the variables that are just available to you all the time. And these are so powerful. They let you do a lot of things. So the one that we're going to use is an argument variable. Here we go. What we're going to be using today is target user. So the target user is going to be the person that was added at the end of the shout out. So let's go back to our chat. When we did our exclamation point hug at dommdynamite, the at dommdynamite, that is a target user because you put their at tag in the command, they've now been targeted. And so that is known in MixItUp as the target user. So as we can see here, how we want to like actually reference them, there's a few different ways, but we're going to stick with this very simple way. And that is the target user, and then it says underscores here, but what that means in short is that you can put whatever value you actually wanted there. And we're going to use the value name. So what we're going to end up using is target user name. But if you ever need to know how any of this stuff works, it's all very well organized in this wiki. Great job, guys. Definitely check this out if you need to find out what data is available to you. All right, back to the command. So here we're going to say, let's see, something simple. So we can actually do two different usernames here because we have not only the target user, but we have the user who also ran it. And that we can just use, we can just take the target out of that variable and just call it username. So we can say username gives, and then we can say target user name a great big hug with a little heart. There we go. So now when this is run, it should take the user that ran it and put their name here and put the user that they're targeting and put it where target username is and put that out as a message. And that'll be nice. So let's try it out, shall we? When we're done with our commands, we just hit the save command here. But before we leave this window, let's go ahead and go over what other buttons we have here because they're very useful. If you're just trying to do a test command really quick, you can actually use this test command button, which we'll go ahead and try using that here in a minute. And that will just run the command for you. It gives you the opportunity to put in variables so you can be pretty thorough with your testing. The other two buttons over here are export and import from file. These are really nice if you have complex commands. What they'll allow you to do is to have an entire list of commands saved as a file when you export it, and then you'll be able to import it in another command window and then just load that, and all those commands will be pre-filled as they were. I think the only thing that doesn't get filled is the top here, these things, but you'll have all of your logic will be in place, and it's very useful if you're doing things that are very similar to each other. But anyway, so we're going to test this really quick. So let's bring over my window, and we'll hit the test button. So you see it asks what our arguments are. So the argument is the target's going to be dommdynamite because I don't have anybody else in my chat right now, I don't think. Or actually, I think I have some bots in there, don't I? Oh, cool. We got Papa Wolf in there. Let's go with Papa Wolf. So my argument's actually going to be Papa Wolf VTV. Now, if you're new to this sort of thing, this might seem strange to you because you're like, well, this is not how commands are run. And the reason why is because this is a test. And so we're testing it without creating the command yet. I'll show you how to test it in the actual chat, but this is just for like inside MixItUp testing. So this might be helpful in the future. Good to know. And the rest of it can be fine. I just want to make sure we had a different person. So it'll say I'm hugging somebody else. So let's go ahead and get back to the chat and we'll test our command. And there we go. We have the auto mod says dommdynamite gives Papa Wolf VTV a great big hug. How beautiful is that? So that's how you test and mix it up. But now we can actually test in the chat after we save the command. So we'll save it. And now we can take note that we now have the example commands group that contains our hug command. We can see our different aliases that we made for it and our permissions and cooldowns at a glance. It's actually pretty nice. And we also have a test command button here as well. If we ever need to edit the command, we have the edit command button. And if you want to get rid of it, delete command, and if you just want to temporarily disable it, you can uncheck that checkbox, or you can do it for the entire group if you like. So now we want to test it in the chat. So let's bring our chat back over. We should be able to do exclamation point hug, and this time we'll do at. We got the auto mod in here now, so at least it's in the search. So we'll hug the auto mod. So there we go. We hug the auto mod spits it back. dommdynamite gives the auto mod a great big hug. How beautiful is that? Yeah, that's our basic hug command in MixItUp. I hope you guys found this tutorial helpful. I'm going to try to put out more in the future, so keep an eye out for future tutorials in MixItUp. And good luck on your adventures in improving your stream. Have a good one, guys.